Hi, everybody. I'm hoping this goes live. Every live begins with, I'm hoping this is live. Okay, yes, I see that we are live on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Sharon Shachaf, creator and administrator of Academic Writers Unblock, and also our group dissertation support circle for summer 2021. Stay tuned for a lot more resources coming your ways. We will have a challenge on the first week of June where I will be addressing a lot of the questions that are coming up in the group and that I'm going to address quickly today in a much more thorough, organized way. You will have micro mini lessons that are based on my signature workshop for academic writers, specifically designed to help you move past writing blocks and learning how to deal with the emotional, cognitive, psychological, and even physical realities of avoidance. And then the next bit in the workshop and in our micro lessons that we're going to have on that week deals a lot with the questions that came up today, which are a lot of questions around time. How do we plan time? How do we dance with time? This is how I reframe the question, right? It's time management, and I'll talk about this more in a second. Today I'm just coming up for 10 minutes, so as to not to overwhelm as well. So this is going to be what we're focusing on today. In the micro lessons, in the challenge we will move on from learning how to dance with time to looking at you as a craft person. What do you need in order to develop a writing practice that's a craft, where you know every day when you come in what is going to be required of you, how to approach your craft. And we will also talk about style, which some of the questions that came up for today had to do a little bit with craft and style, right? How do we, style is the question of how do we say what we need to say, right? There is what you need to say, and then there's how you say it. Style answers the structural questions. How do you frame it? How do you say it? How do you format it? Okay, so to jump right into some of your amazing questions this week, and I try to answer right as I get the questions, because I find that this is my best flow is in that feedback loop with you guys. But a lot of the questions can actually, they start flowing together. So I'll read a couple of the questions. How to start back on a project after a long break? It's a great question. I didn't write the name of who wrote that question. Mara asked, how do I move from note-taking to starting printing up drops? So Mara actually took my workshop, and I definitely encourage a lot of earlier stages to understand that writing is not just the part where we do this and you write, even our first draft, but definitely don't try to write your last draft first. But this behavior of flapping your, fingers over a keyboard comes after a much longer, more gradual process. So I'm going to talk about this in a minute, the stages. So I definitely introduce in my workshops, in my teachings, when I work with clients who are stuck, I always try to slow down their process, and slower is smoother and smoother is faster, right? So if you're stuck because you think every time you come to your table, your desk or the coffee shop table where you work, wherever it is, you're supposed to be already writing your last draft first, right? It's a belief that we have, right? Today I'm going to write paragraph 1 of chapter 1, and then tomorrow paragraph 2 and 3 and 4 all the way to the end. That kind of approach and belief about the writing process can really trip us up, because in fact the writing process is a lot less linear than that. There are moments in time where you should engage your project, going into the fine details, and there are moments where you've got to step back and outline and see the bigger picture, or brainstorm or dreamstorm. And what I really try to instill in my clients and students is the understanding that it is a process, that you need to have patience and you need to have curiosity to ask, what is really going on right now in my project? Am I trying to do this when what I need to be doing really is to go back through let me show you, I always like to show my folder files and go through all of that to get a little bit more clarity? where am I in the process? So what we will do on our challenge on the week where I'll be giving you the micro lessons is we will really go into detail about what are the stages of the process when you write a dissertation or you write a journal article or you take your dissertation and you make it into a book or journal articles. And we will talk about this in great detail. All right, more questions. What is your time management suggestion for having time to write every day? I actually like that this question a little bit, has a bit of an answer. The answer, I definitely emphasize the need to, gradually introduce not organized. Organized can trip you up. A habitual, regular writing practice where you plan to be a certain amount of time at your desk. I'll talk about this more in a minute and much more in the week to come, but I will say that even with this, it's a dance. What I encourage people to do when they work with me, I'm not going to get too much into this because this is for the week, but I definitely have them plan once a week, the first work session that they have every week. We were doing this in my workshop this week, and a lot of my students are now practicing with it, that the first session that you have is a planning session, and that you look ahead at your week and you start by blocking all the structured activities that you have to do. If you're teaching or you have a doctor appointment, or that between 5 and 9 you are with your children, block that out. And it's almost like playing Battleship. You start by blocking out all the stuff that is non-negotiable, and then you find and you locate the windows in which you can write. And after you identify those windows, and this is the Battleship part, right? You block them out in red. And what I recommend, and this is again very loosely, we would be looking through these things much more in detail. But what I recommend to do is locate those times and then see, well, maybe it's 8 hours. Sometimes it's just 8 hours. I would still say, tell yourself, okay, I will be doing writing, which is not just this, but attending to my project, thinking, brainstorming, outlining. But if I have 8 hours, I commit to do 4. So the other side of the trick is, right, so let's say that Monday you're teaching and it's a mess and you have no time, but that Tuesday, after you put your kids at school, whatever, you have 4 hours. If you said that you would do 4 hours, if you know that you're the kind of person that actually sits there for the 4 hours, try to do the 4 hours the first time you have that window. But then, if you got distracted or whatever else happened, you still know that there's a window Wednesday afternoon and there's a window Thursday morning. And if all is lost Thursday night, right, there is still a window for you to be able to address your writing. Another thing that I want to recommend with that is and this I often, I tell my students, think about it this way. When you are if you're a teacher, right, or whatever job you have, when you're in the classroom, can your mom call you with questions about, I don't know, Easter, about Passover, about a family dinner? No, right? Can your kids come in and interrupt you? No, because you're teaching, right? Can my children come in the room right now to ask me questions? No, because I told them I'm going live and I'm going to be on my group live. So unless somebody's bleeding, they're not going to come in and interrupt. I want you to exercise with self-compassion, trying to create that same boundary around your writing time, right? So if you know the non-negotiable time when you're teaching, nobody's going to be interrupting your professional work. How do you create the same boundaries? First of all, in your approach, right? If you've done the planning and you set up, you identified your writing windows, how do you create a barrier around them that's is taken as seriously by the people in your life, right? And by yourself? Then you can start making progress. All right, so that's one thing, create the time, understand the time. The other side of this, and this relates to some of the other questions, so I'll go back to this, right? How do I start back on a project after a long period of time? How do I move from note taking to drafting? And then another one, when do you stop editing the first shitty draft and make progress? So all of these questions fall under another topic that we will be covering at great length. or trying to be as short as possible, because those are going to be micro lessons. But that overarching topic is the issue of understanding the stages of the writing process. So I was trying to do this through Zoom, but today the technology was not, as always, it's always hard. It wasn't letting me go live through Zoom on the group. So I will be posting under the live, I will be posting a PowerPoint slide and maybe another chart from this fantastic book, Around the Writer's Block by Roseanne Bain. And in chapter 4, she has a really fantastic chart that looks through the stages of the writing process. And what I love about that chart is that it tells you how your work time may look like when you're in different stages. So, for example, the early stages, right? Those are the stages where we are still waiting to have what she calls fresh insight. So if you're coming back to a project after a long time, ask yourself, what would be the best use of your time to cultivate fresh insight? Do you need to reread the project? Now, see, I would say if you're going back to an old project and you're trying to kind of get back in touch with it, that your writing time, the writing window, right? You're not supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to be sitting there, maybe reading at first, just sitting with the discomfort of rereading the old project and rereading it patiently with the intention to find how you reconnect with the project, right? So that would count. So I have a problem with people going online and saying, I put in that many, I have that many words written today, because number of words that you generate is a good measure for when you are in the stage that I think is the 5th stage, according to her. Like, this is the stage when you're actually writing, right? There is fresh insight. Then she says, saturate yourself. Stage 2 is saturate yourself in the research until you're turned around in it, until you're lost. Then you have the insight and you go like, aha, okay, this is what the project is. And then she only talks about incubation. That's the 3rd stage for her. And again, what does it look like when you're incubating a new idea? Remember when you were incubating, think about, I always like to talk about the actual incubation of a chick inside an egg. So I have an image, maybe I'll put that, post that image also underneath, right? What happens inside an egg when it's incubating a new baby chick, or inside a pregnancy, right? You can't see inside the egg. So when you are incubating a writing project, you need to cultivate this trust, that you trust that although you can't see the growth, it is growing, right? So there's a lot of stuff that you can do just in combating your own anxiety, that you want to be in the stage where you're writing the thing, but you're not giving it time for, what do I need to do in order to reconnect with the work? What do I need to do to get inspired? Sometimes you need to take a walk, or even take a nap, or, do yoga, or sit there and doodle and listen to music. And this counts. It's part of the work. So what ends up happening is we sit there and we do these things, but we don't count them as work. We say, instead of writing, I reread my old dissertation. Well, how do you go back to an old dissertation to make it something new and not give it a week or two even of just sitting there and reading it? And maybe you need to go back and read the actual note you took during your research, because maybe your question is shifting, right? So when we're re-engaging a project, we got to make it kind of new so that we can be curious enough about it to give us the energy to do the new work, right? So maybe there's a stage there that you just need to allow. What do you need to release? What do you need to trust? That if you show up and you engage with the topic, with the questions you have about the topic, and with the ways to answer the questions you have about the topic from a new perspective, if you allow yourself that period of time, that can solve your problem. Now, the other part of that question that says, the Amara's question, how do I get from the part where I sat with it, I took a million notes. I thought all my thoughts. I have all of these things. How do I move from notes to draft? So again, we will get into a lot of details and many, many different ways to approach doing that. But I would say, again, these are the question here is of stages. In a big picture way, what I will tell you is this. When you've gotten into the point where you have a lot of notes and you've been with it for a while, I would say leave it. Go take a walk, and in your walk, try to think about, the core of the project. What are you trying to say? What is the one takeaway, right? Listen, every journal article, every dissertation, even every book can basically say one big thing. So start with the one big thing, come home after your walk and just write about, what do I want people to take away from this project, right? And again, there's a lot more that comes in. You can go back to your notes and you can start doing something that's called a zero draft, where you just write transitions between chunks of information notes. So let's say your first chapter or second chapter or whatever has to address these certain things. One way to just not try to figure out all the structural questions before you start, but still getting started, is to make a bunch of index cards, and each one represents, one idea that needs to go in there, and just sit there and, you get to do this, so you feel happy. So you write a zero draft where you make very crude connections between the points that that need to be there. By doing that, and then you can go back and read it, even if it's a mess, even if it's crazy, you still have something now that you can work from and improve. All right, as I knew, I think you can hear the power tools. Our time is up because there's gardeners. I live where, there's a lot of gardens. So I'm going to come back here, and hopefully you guys will have more questions. We will be talking about these things more and more in weeks to come. So try these few different tips and hacks. Let me know if you have more questions and ways to make this clearer. And hopefully this already inspired some of you to re-engage with curiosity, with compassion, and just ask yourself that. What are the stages to get me from where I am to this part of my process where I am sitting there writing? Are there more stages? And again, I'm going to put in the comments here the chart with the stages. Do I need to understand that my work during those stages does not look like this, but it looks like me writing notes, longhand, or, doing outlines, or taking a walk to think about it and focusing on the next little step and the next little stage before I can get to writing a first draft and then sending it out for review or getting support, and then, rewriting a second draft, et cetera, et cetera. So we will talk more about the role of different drafts, but I just want to, before I finish, I want to just address that question of when do I stop editing the first shitty draft? You write a first shitty draft, you leave it alone, you get some feedback, and then you write a second draft. You don't keep editing the first shitty draft, right? You pull, you push the needle a little bit more. And in this, there's already a lot of notes, but there's this book called A Writer's Time by Kenneth Achety, and he talks about making big changes in between drafts. So you write a draft, you don't keep editing it. You read it, you understand what's, where it got you and where you still need to go, and then you write a new second draft. You don't keep editing the first draft. Each new draft tackles a new challenge. So I will say before I leave, I will share with you another quote that I love from Luis de Salvo's This Art of Slow Writing. Oh, here's The Writer's Time and The Art of Slow Writing. So Kenneth Achety, A Writer's Time. It's a really good book. And then Luis de Salvo, The Art of Slow Writing. So Luis de Salvo says it takes many, many drafts to write a work of art or any kind of creative writing. I see academic writing as creative writing, right? So it takes many, many drafts to create your finished product. And then she says, I'm going to read it up here. Where is it? All right. we can only tackle one challenge at a time at once. So with academic writings, what I really tell people to do is like write a first draft that only tackles the research question, let's say. Don't tackle putting in your citation. Don't tackle all of those different things in each draft, in one draft. Just try to tackle one thing at a time, and then know that you're going to add different challenges, right? So for her, she talks about this in terms of creative writing. So I'm reading this from her quote, right? It takes many drafts to create a work of art. We can tackle all of our challenges at once. We proceed in stages. And in each stage, we add more things to the draft. So think about this. Again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to give you ideas on how to engage your work in different ways. What are some things that you can tackle in your first draft and leave the rest for your second draft or your third draft? Do you not want to put all your citations in on draft one? Or maybe the other way around. Maybe the first draft you just want to put in, your sources and what you're going to do with the sources. Let your drafts not look anything like the finished product, okay? Let the drafts tackle different challenges in the finished product, and don't put the burden of perfection on each draft. I will tell you this, as a dissertation advisor, the students I had that finished the fastest were the ones who were willing to share really messy drafts. Really, you would bring in a draft and I would sit there and be like, okay, this should go in chapter 1 and this should go in chapter 3. I think this one is in chapter 5, but here they're all together. But you know what? Because they gave me that draft and I read through it, they got the opportunity for somebody from the outside, in this case me, to say, oh, okay, I see in your mind these things are all weaved together, but let's, see if we can put this here and this there, right? So by allowing yourself to write a messy but complete draft, you can really push the needle, and also feel better, and then have less anxiety because you are doing something. So I would invite you guys to engage your work, be there, plan, find the time that you're going to be there. But when you are there, don't force and don't push and don't try to be in a more advanced stage than you currently are. Be where you are and accept where you are, and then you can lovingly make some more progress if you don't try to push beyond where you are at this point. All right, my friends, a lot more to come. Thank you for all your questions. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Invite people to join the group. It's really helpful for me. I know I do a lot of these. I love to hold, this is a labor of love. I love to foster this community. I really envision this community to, be able to support those who cannot afford to hire a coach and cannot afford to take a workshop. I will be offering later on this summer, I will be offering a super reduced price version of my signature workshop, and also a more, the regular workshop that's a little bit more expensive, but can really give you a tour de force of your own writing process and help you get unstuck. But I really do envision this forum as a place where I can give back, and really allow a lot of people to get unstuck and get through their summer of writing with, well, I want to say with joy. I know for some of you this would be like, lady, what are you talking about? But at least not in a torturous way, right? So I invite you to invite your friends who are writing dissertations or are writing books or, engaging in academic or other kinds of writing and are planning to do a lot of writing this summer. I will say another thing before I succumb to the power tools outside. If you have ideas for stuff that, you can do to work with. So for example, if you want to create accountability writing time, like, you've done your planning and you know that you're going to be sitting there between 8 a.m. and 12 noon on Wednesday, and you find that it's helpful for you to say, come on the group and say, hey, anybody else wants to jump in and co-write? We can do a Zoom. Feel free to initiate your own stuff on the group. And yes, and also feel free to always ask questions. You see that I'm to a fault. My favorite writing distraction is to be on my Facebook groups and help my tribe, my people. So keep the questions coming, bring more people in. So by the time we have this, writing challenge in June, we have a robust community. And the more we lift other people, we lift ourselves up. And that's the hope for the summer. So thank you, sweet friends, and happy writing.